If you're new in town or just new to this whole podcast thing, you're tuning in to Lore by Night, the podcast that discusses all things vampiric with no fear of breaching the Masquerade. In this episode, we continue the Lore by Night How to Wraith series, a mini-series that aims to improve the role-playing of players and storytellers during tabletop sessions. This episode will focus on role-playing specters. Spectres are lost souls consumed by their own darkness. When a wraith becomes overwhelmed by desolation and despair, its inner shadow takes control, morphing it into a spectre. In this dreadful transformation, the entity sheds its former self, giving rise to a truly malevolent, twisted persona entwined in a vast collective consciousness. Lost are the connections to its past, the warmth of companionship, and former guiding principles. A spectre is left tethered to a bleak existence. These spectres traverse the desolate realms of the afterlife, servile to the forces of oblivion. In fewer words, spectres are beings of implacable nihilistic evil that spread pain and suffering to all in their wake. From most circles, the spectres in all their forms are going to be the most commonly encountered foes within the Shadowlands. From Mortorites to Striplings, Shades, Haints, or the almighty Malfeans, all bring varying levels of troubling news for any unprepared group. For some groups, becoming a spectre is a mechanical end state. If you, the psyche, manage to accumulate 10 points of permanent angst, the shadow consumes you one last time and you become a shadow eaten, a spectre. But why should the RP stop there? Well, it may surprise you that all the current editions of Wraith the Oblivion, 1st, 2nd and 20th Anniversary Edition, offer players you to take on the roles of spectres in games, either as a pack of spectres or a mix of regular wraiths and spectres. Why would any player with any decent morals want to explore the depravities of spectres? Well, for the short answer, for similar reasons, you have players indulge in the Sabbat of Vampire the Masquerade to experience the world through the other side of the looking glass. Sabbat fans know there's a lot more to them than what you're probably thinking about now. Naturally, there's more to playing a spectre than just a depraved wraith. After all, just because you're a wraith does not mean that you are a morally bound person. So, allow me to indulge you with a touch of oblivion. Playing a spectre is going to take two forms. I feel most people assume what I would start a session and or chronicle where everyone is a spectre, belonging to a similar or separate casts, but we need to take a step back and focus on what the wraith before the descent into degeneracy. Even with the likes of Haints and Mortorites, these deaths and experiences were so harrowing that becoming spectres from the get-go, we need to think about the person they were in life. Even with every other cast, we need to think about what they were as a wraith, what led to their downfall, and of course, their final harrowing. It starts with the wraith and their shadow guide. The ST notices the rising angst in the player, or the shadow guide would bring it to the ST's attention, and wants to introduce a spectre to the mix, or the player is thinking about making the downward spiral and wants that extra challenge and the dark destruction that brings. If this is something that players want to do, they should consider their reasons their wraith would have been drawn to oblivion. The ST shouldn't be afraid to take a moment to consider the ramifications too, even if it means taking a little break from the game or immediate action to mull things over. After all, it's your game too. The shadow guide and psyche should consider the shadow itself, as the use of dark passions and fawns are absolutely key to achieving this. Fawns will distort the views and outlook of the wraith, feeding deep layers of doubt and insecurities, stoking fires of anger and hatred and crushing their hopes and dreams of the shadow's own deeds. Acting in accordance with the dark passions feeds that darker part of the psyche, the essence of them they wish didn't exist, a side of them that would define their existence as a shadow. It is also possible to introduce new ones during the final session to the wraith's existence to amplify the tension. Faye, our cheekily carefree latte artist from last time, may be doing her absolute best to be a good, upholding citizen of the necropolis and tries to assist the hierarchy by informing a legionnaire about the presence of renegades near her haunt. But what if the legionnaires took her in as well, assuming that she is a spy or some other bombastic reason? It could even just be as simple as fuck you, we're melting you down because we need weapons. Whatever would happen next is likely going to be extremely traumatic and would inspire some degree of hatred for the hierarchy, as well as the justifiable response of "what's the point?", a question anyone who's depressed and or suicidal has asked themselves many times before, which I say from experience. Using dark passions and thorns is only the start of the in-game torment. Knocking the Wraith's inability to interact with the Skinlands in their former life should be present with or without the aid of the Shadow Dice. With Shadow Dice and Thorns, the promise of manipulation of power is a careful tightrope act, but when used effectively can offer great rewards for both the Shadow and Psyche, as well as frustrations when the safety wheels are off. Reminding the Psyche of a particular harrowing is a great way of rubbing salt into the wound, making them feel pains and sorrows of their eternity. Really twist the knife into the character, not the players. Go and give it a good little wiggle. Ultimately, the Shadow is gaslighting the Wraith where the Shadow wants the Psyche to be. Is the Psyche weak-willed or embracing the darkness? The reason should be beyond the obvious appeal of evil. Spectres are individuals that are nuanced as well. The ST, Shadow Guide and Psyche should all converse about the motivations behind the descent and the impact it will have on the character and everyone else around them. Fighting and submitting to the darker urges should take a good amount of time, not overnight or a couple of sessions. The ST should try to be subtle about these things as well, as drawing too much attention to the metamorphosis will not only become distracting but hinder some of the suspension and surprise the Psyche and Shadow Guide are trying to set up for everyone else. The Shadow Guide should not get too excited and eager with its roleplay either for similar reasons, and the Psyche should let things come as naturally as the scenario will bring. With luck, the surprise around the table would be a genuine response from the players as well as the characters. But what would the actual transformation look like? There is no Sailor Moon inspired magical girl transformation. Obviously, you're going to have a dramatic harrowing, false or otherwise, and like all harrowings, it has to be super personal and take a decent amount of time, so have fun conjuring up the excuses to convince the circle and deal with the consequences of fucking up. Spectres emerge into existence similar to a Wraith into their cull. Spectres, however, have cocoons that, unlikely a particularly powerful Wraith, cannot burst out of themselves, at least not in most circumstances. They can try, but that increases the chances of botches happening, which we will explore in a moment. Breaking from the cocoon is where the hive mind dark arcanoi forms, as well as all the screaming warranted from something in agonizing pain being torn and assaulted by oblivion. Give some consideration about the Spectre's thoughts on this and how fucking terrified they would be by all of this. Most Spectres, particularly ones that have become shadow-eaten, start as doppelgangers, as they can still blend into Wraith society, regardless of Molly usage. Again, this differs from Haints and Mortrites, who enter the Shadowlands as Spectres already. Like the Doppelgangers, these Spectres would have their fetters they would want to destroy rather than resolve peacefully. All Spectres have access to hive mind, locked into the corrupting web of oblivion, and every Spectre is clever enough to take advantage of the opportunity investing into this dark arcanoi. Your dark passions are your focus, your passions for the role of the Psyche, replacing the Shadow, which we will touch upon soon as well. These will define your reasoning to stick around your short, new life. I just don't mean the one you would describe the life expectancy of the Guru with all the fighting and such, but a literal short life. Oblivion chips and peels away at the Spectre, making a Spectre last about 12 years, maybe 12 at a push. Mechanically, whenever a Spectre botches a roll, they lose a permanent point of corpus. Given the likelihood of botches occurring in a single session, let alone a chronicle, you can see how short-lived their lives are. It is also unlikely you'll be playing a chronicle lasting years. 4 to 6 sessions I would suspect such a chronicle would last. But what does this all mean for you, prospective Spectre player? If your Spectre wants to last as long as it can, spreading the pain oblivion casts upon it, pain the Spectre cannot contain, you have to be clever. Again, think of your dark passions. Using Fae again, a dark passion of topple the hierarchy, might be a great long-term goal, but not one to easily achieve and gain angst from, but spreading fear allows ample opportunity. As a Shadow Eaten, there is also the consideration that you cannot interact interact with the skin lands as easily as you once did, as well as the dulling, of the senses to protect you from the screaming torment that is the tempest so many congregate in. The write-up for Deathsight is more intense now, plus a new death sense to tackle with. Spreaders of nihilism do exhibit fear, especially a baby Spectre like yourself. Don't skip on these RP opportunities and the horrors more experienced Spectres bring to the mix. It may influence the psyche's goals for redemption. The shadow guide of old now becomes the psyche, the last bastion of hope and the slivers of all that was once good about the Spectre. It doesn't bow down to low tricks, lies and deceit like the shadow did, which has now manifested into Spectres, remember. The new psych guide is a manifestation of the Wraith's higher urges, praising when it is deserved, producing happy memories of days gone past as a Wraith and as a mortal, guiding them to a path of kindness and love. Obviously, it is a finer, more difficult line to walk. This is particularly difficult if you are dealing with someone who caves in the slightest compliment through shyness or cynicism like my partner and I. You can work out which one is which in the comments below. When creating the psyche, go back to the shadow guiding episode and reflect upon who and what that person was, not the ghost by themselves. This will obviously play a part into the creation, yes, but remember, we focus on creating believable characters here, not just power gaming and cheating the system. If this sounds too tough for you, good, for I never have said any of this was easy. Spectres may be similar to Wraiths in that they are made the same, have the same bag of tricks to play with a few more on the side, learning the skills of their foes. Where they differ wildly is their temperament, and I compared them briefly to the Sabbat earlier in this guide, who do see themselves as, dare I say, the valiant sword of Cain. They view themselves as the true Cainites, the noble heroes fighting the third generation of vampires that have made everyone else blind sheep. Spectres are not that, nor do they see themselves as that. They are tortured souls in the most literal description of the phrase. Spectres embrace pain and spread it like COVID-19 at Gen Con. It gives them drive, purpose, and a means to release their anger through the years of suffering as a human and Wraith, exasperated through the shadow that has been eating them whole. They live very fast and die really fucking young, chasing wild invasions of necropoli, biorays, and any poor Wraith they can get their hands on. They are self-serving prophets of oblivion, particularly those Nephraks and Malthians. All Spectres, regardless of caste and age, see entropy in all things and work to drive it all down to oblivion as pure monsters. Desensitized and uncaring for the thoughts and feelings and others as they spread madness and invoke fear in all these things. This is the horror of role-playing as Spectre, becoming a monster gagging to see it all end, dragging their foes down with them. Now, to conclude properly, I wish to state two things. First of all, everything I've just presented to you is my own opinion. At the end of the day, you can do whatever you want. As long as everyone is having fun and feeling that unique essence of political horror, you are interpreting things correctly. The other thing I wish to reinforce is that I have only presented a mere portion of my knowledge, power, and takes on tonight's topic. Why would I give you all my secrets? Trick question! I fucking wouldn't. I can reveal, however, that all my knowledge comes from the book, so go and read them if you want to learn more. Again, it is not needed to enjoy the game, but if you wanted to develop your character concept within the grander lore, go and legally purchase the books and read them thoroughly. To be kept updated, follow the Lord by Night Instagram and Blue Sky pages to find out when we upload each episode. You can also find out by subscribing to the YouTube channel and clicking on the little bell, as you'll be immediately notified when the latest episode is live. Until next time, farewell.